My meticulously structured life, built on predictable routines and deep-seated trust, shattered into a million pieces the moment I discover my wife, Eleanor, wasn't just sleeping in the next room, but intimately entwined with another man. I have always been a creature of habit. My tenure in the educational consortium provided me with both structure and stability, qualities I deeply valued. My mornings typically involved crafting intricate lesson plans, attending myriad administrative meetings that felt more like endurance tests, and instructing history, a subject I profoundly enjoyed not just for its narratives, but for its lessons on human nature. Weekends, when not dedicated to preparing for the week ahead, meticulously grading papers, or delving into new historical research, were spent with my spouse, Eleanor. Though we had no children of our own, we often quipped that our students, a vibrant tapestry of young minds from various backgrounds, provided ample parental fulfillment. Life was predictably busy, precisely as I preferred it. Then came the annual Educators Conference, a welcome divergence from the usual routine, a 4-day escape to the sprawling Grand Metropolitan Hotel in a city 300 miles away, and an invaluable opportunity to engage with fellow educators. It was a brief but much anticipated respite, a chance to recharge and gather innovative teaching methodologies. Eleanor and I had been married for a considerable period, celebrating our 5th anniversary just a month prior, and we both anticipated this yearly retreat, not just as a professional obligation, but as our customary excursion. Days were dedicated to acquiring novel teaching methodologies, attending workshops on literacy intervention and pedagogical advancements, while evenings were reserved for leisure. We'd mingle with colleagues from across the state, sharing war stories from the classroom and debating the merits of various educational theories over dinner. This year appeared no different. We had one final night to enjoy before resuming our conventional lives. After a delightful dinner at the hotel's bustling Italian restaurant, where the aroma of garlic and basil mingled with animated conversation and some surprisingly energetic dancing among colleagues in the ballroom, Eleanor, always the more graceful of us, had twirled me around effortlessly. I felt utterly content, a deep sense of calm washing over me. Little did I suspect that my profound sense of tranquility was on the very precipice of being shattered into irreparable fragments. I awoke abruptly, disoriented and bewildered, the residual warmth of the previous evening's happiness rapidly dissipating. Sitting upright in bed, my heart thumping an erratic rhythm against my ribs, I struggled to ascertain my whereabouts. Gradually, the ornate wallpaper and plush furnishings of the room registered, and I recognized I was in a hotel room at the Grand Metropolitan, yet an unsettling sensation permeated the cool morning air. A metallic taste coated my tongue, a premonition of something grim. As my composure slowly returned, an instinctual reflex led me to reach for Eleanor, my hand seeking her familiar warmth. But her side of the bed was chillingly cold and utterly vacant. A sharp, icy wave of panic washed over me, a sensation akin to plunging into an Arctic sea. I rationalized desperately that she must have simply gone to the restroom and inadvertently roused me from my deep sleep. We had both attended the same conference. I for middle school teachers, specializing in the nuances of adolescent learning, and she for elementary, always keen on foundational literacy. We had taught in the same consortium for years, I for 9, navigating the challenging landscape of adolescent minds, and Eleanor for 6, nurturing the eager curiosity of younger students. It was our customary excursion to discover innovative methods to enhance our students' literacy scores, a shared professional passion. While we certainly devoted substantial time to conference sessions, absorbing new knowledge and networking, the evenings were entirely ours, a precious reprieve. That particular night, we had dined, danced, and savored time with friends. Subsequently, we returned to our room, shared intimacy, and drifted into sleep, wrapped in the comforting illusion of our shared life. But now, something was distinctly amiss. The silence in the room was too profound, punctuated only by the distant hum of the hotel's ventilation system. Then I detected voices, faint but clear, not emanating from the bathroom, but from the adjacent suite. A cold dread seeped into my bones, spreading through my limbs like a paralyzing toxin. The connecting door, which we rarely even noticed, was slightly ajar, a sliver of faint light escaping from within. Anxiety, raw and unbidden, flooded through me, turning my blood to ice water. I swung my legs out of bed, the carpet soft beneath my bare feet, and approached the narrow opening with a sense of morbid curiosity and profound trepidation. My hand trembled as I pushed it open, just a crack, peering inside. The faint illumination, probably from a bedside lamp, revealed two silhouettes near the bed, their forms indistinct but undeniably human. I already knew, with an agonizing certainty that resonated deep within my soul, what grim sight awaited me. She was betraying me. Despite the room being shrouded in near total darkness, it felt as though I was witnessing everything in stark, unforgiving daylight, every detail etched into my memory with agonizing clarity. I heard Eleanor utter, her voice laced with a breathless intimacy I had never heard directed at anyone but me. "Oh my goodness, Victor, these past 3 days have been absolutely incredible." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. "What?" I mumbled, utterly confused, my voice a barely audible croak. "3 days? 3 days." The devastating realization struck me forcefully, a sledgehammer to the chest. My mind, usually so precise and analytical, reeled. I had been a complete imbecile. The conference had started on Wednesday. It was now Saturday morning. Our lunch on Wednesday was splendid, wasn't it? Eleanor continued, her voice oblivious to my shattering presence, still sweet and laced with affection. Skipping the workshops on Thursday for our little escapade was risky, but no one at the school suspects what I've been doing. And last night, with Adrian in the next room, it was magnificent. It was pure magic. My blood ran cold. Hearing my name, Adrian, mentioned as if I were merely furniture, an unwitting prop in their sordid drama. "If Adrian can't make you happy, someone else certainly should," Victor interjected, his voice a low, masculine murmur, oozing with self-satisfaction. "Oh, don't delude yourself, Victor," Eleanor retorted swiftly, a hint of playful mockery in her tone that twisted a knife in my gut. "Adrian offers so much more, but I cannot conceive of a better lover." I initially smirked, a hollow, bitter laugh catching in my throat at the audacious claim, but her words were utterly incongruous with the horrific scene before me. The humor died as quickly as it had arrived, replaced by a searing, all-consuming rage. As my rage intensified, a chilling clarity began to set in, cutting through the haze of shock and betrayal. "How is this conceivable, Alexander?" Eleanor inquired, her voice now trembling, addressing the man with her, Victor, by my first name, a slip that confirmed my identity to the man who was defiling my marriage, my life. It was a cruel irony, a final twist of the knife. Victor, surprisingly composed, responded, "It has been extraordinary, Eleanor, but tonight it concludes. I am returning home with Adrian, and I will be the ideal wife. He won't require attention for years, and my guilt will fuel that." Alexander was not a large man. I could have easily subdued him, especially with the adrenaline surging through my veins, making my muscles hum with barely contained violence. I have never been adept at regulating my emotions. It is both my strength and my weakness, a dual-edged sword. I could have utterly decimated him right then and there, reduced him to a whimpering mess, but something primal, some fragment of my logical brain, restrained me. In retrospect, it probably saved me from incarceration, from losing everything in a different, more destructive way. A plan, precise and cold, rapidly formulated in my mind, cutting through the haze of my fury. I needed concrete proof, irrefutable evidence that would leave no room for doubt or denial. As I considered the whereabouts of my mobile device, I realized with a start that it was already clutched in my trembling hand. Instinct, a desperate primal urge for self-preservation, had taken over the moment I approached the entryway. My fingers moved with a practiced ease I didn't know I possessed as I discreetly set my phone to video record, the small red light a silent sentinel in the darkness. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, I slightly opened the door and captured them on film, their naked betrayal unfolding before my lens. I had amassed sufficient footage of their transgression, both their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the lamp, and their names articulated with chilling clarity. It was time to confront Eleanor and ensure she comprehended the profound cost of her secret. I have never received an official diagnosis, but I possess compulsive tendencies, one of which is an almost pathological aversion to wasting time. Eleanor often found this peculiar habit amusing, often teasing me about my pre-dawn packing rituals, but tonight it would serve me well, a weapon in my arsenal of silent retribution. I invariably packed the majority of my belongings the night before departing a hotel, laying out clothes for the journey, ensuring every item had its designated place. So, I was already prepared, my suitcases neatly organized, a silent testament to my obsessive foresight. Discretion was paramount, silence my ally. Opening and closing doors without a sound was a skill I had perfected over time, born from years of early morning departures without disturbing Eleanor, almost like a professional intruder. I began by gently closing the connecting door to their suite, meticulously avoiding any noise that might alert them, as they were too engrossed in each other, too lost in their selfish pleasure, to notice the subtle shift in the air. Their carelessness, their blatant disregard for my presence, suggested this was likely their final shared moment, a bitter victory for me. I locked the connecting door, the soft click barely audible, and swiftly moved to my section of the room. Clothes for the following day were laid out, suitcases were packed, and everything except essential toiletries was stowed away. My movements were swift, economical, fueled by a cold, calculating rage. I dressed quickly, packed her attire and personal care items with a brutal indifference, and secured everything. Although managing both our bags, now my bags, proved cumbersome, a heavy weight in my hands, I succeeded, my resolve hardening with each item I packed away. I was uncertain of their timeline, of how much longer their illicit encounter would last, but I resolved to complete my task before they finished theirs, before they dared to emerge from their temporary haven of deceit. I double-checked my possessions, confirming nothing was left behind that would bind me to her, maneuvered the suitcases towards the main door, and braced myself for the next hurdle. Hotel doors are notoriously loud, their heavy frames designed for security, not stealth. I carefully twisted the knob, disengaged the deadbolt with a whisper of metal, and slid one suitcase into the corridor, followed by the other, each movement agonizingly slow and deliberate. I then collected the used towels and crumpled linens from our bathroom, depositing them in the service area nearby, intending to leave her devoid of even the simplest comforts, knowing full well the depth of my fury and her impending discomfort. Moving swiftly yet silently, a ghost in my own room, I re-entered my room, which was no longer ours, but emphatically mine. The most challenging part was extracting the second suitcase without the main door slamming shut, alerting everyone on the floor. Somehow, with a delicate touch born of adrenaline and spite, I managed to turn the handle just in the nick of time, catching the heavy door before it could crash shut. It was not effortless, but fortune, for once, favored me. I proceeded to the front desk, my face carefully neutral, and informed the night clerk that we faced an emergency and required an immediate checkout. My wife is already outside, on the phone with her family, dealing with a crisis, I stated, my voice steady, handing over both room keys with an air of concerned haste. The clerk, bleary-eyed and accustomed to late-night dramas, simply nodded and processed the request. I loaded the luggage into the car, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me, and commenced the lengthy drive home. That 6-hour journey felt more protracted than traversing from Cloud Haven to Suncoast, each mile stretching into an eternity, with only fleeting stops for rest, fueled by black coffee and the churning turmoil of my thoughts. Home! What a travesty! It was no longer a sanctuary, a shared haven of warmth and intimacy, merely a receptacle for my possessions, a structure of bricks and mortar devoid of meaning. I recognized, with a sharp pang of sorrow and indignation, that I was already thinking like a single man, not a husband. This realization filled me with both sorrow and indignation, a bitter cocktail of emotions. The trip felt even more solitary, having begun around 3 a.m., shrouded in the pre-dawn darkness. In retrospect, departing early was a blessing, a small mercy, as I recall nothing of the first 2 hours beyond my mind frantically attempting to comprehend how I had awakened so early, how I had been so utterly blind. Another minor mercy was avoiding the hangover I might have otherwise endured from the previous night's celebratory drinks. Perhaps I would still be oblivious, lost in a blissful ignorance, or perhaps she was right, and we would have woken later, had a cheerful breakfast, and discussed the week's learnings, all while her secret festered beneath the surface. The sun had fully risen, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, and my mind remained clouded, thick with the fog of betrayal. I craved sustenance and caffeine, a desperate attempt to ground myself. So I began scouting for exits with fast food options, seeking the comforting familiarity of grease and sugar. My phone had an application displaying nearby highway exits, but I was startled to discover 3 missed calls and several messages from unknown numbers. I hadn't even registered the alerts, which underscored how disengaged I had been during the drive. Another compelling reason to exit the vehicle and clear my head, to separate myself from the digital chaos she was no doubt creating. The missed calls and texts were clearly from Eleanor, likely using Victor's phone and the hotel landline to contact me, desperate for answers. I deleted them all without perusing beyond a few words, the sight of her name, or the implication of it, burning my eyes. "Adrian, where are you? Please call." One text implored, a message clearly intended for Victor. No, that was certainly not going to happen anytime soon. Not from me. Not ever. I paused for a quick snack, forcing down a tasteless breakfast sandwich, stretched my aching limbs, and used the facilities staring at my reflection, a stranger staring back. The sooner I established distance, both physical and emotional, between us, the better I would feel, or so I convinced myself, clinging to the flimsy promise of future peace. Why? 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 That persistent question tormented me, a relentless drumbeat in my skull. I'm not an easy person to coexist with. I knew that. I am structured, sometimes rigid, fiercely independent, and Eleanor is well aware of it. I am a workaholic, perpetually striving to be the most effective educator I could be, pouring every ounce of my energy into my students. She purportedly shared a similar drive, a dedication to her craft that mirrored my own. That, in part, explained why we hadn't started a family yet. We were both deeply committed to our careers and our students, whom we frequently referred to as our children. Their success is our greatest joys. I am a trusting individual, sometimes excessively so, a fault that had bitten me before. I extend my trust to people until they shatter it, and then it is irretrievably lost, like a delicate vase dropped on concrete. Eleanor knows this. She has witnessed me lose faith in colleagues who have misled me, in students who have cheated on exams, their excuses falling flat against my unwavering demand for honesty. I do not demand perfection, but I do expect honesty and loyalty, especially from my spouse, the one person who should be my unshakable constant. Eleanor is my first wife, but not my first serious relationship. In high school, I dated a girl, Lydia Green, from my sophomore year until graduation, a whirlwind of first loves and shared dreams. We parted ways before college because we couldn't concur on our respective destinations. She chose an out-of-state university, chasing an ambitious business degree, while I remained local, committed to my teaching aspirations. We acknowledged that a long-distance relationship would be unsustainable, a slow, painful fading, so we ended things before our university journeys even began, a mutual, if heartbreaking, decision. In college, I dated casually, nothing profound, nothing that stirred my soul or challenged my preconceived notions of love. Then, during my senior year, I met Charlotte, whose full name was Chloe, a theater major, all fire and passion. We instantly connected, drawn together by an undeniable spark. She even persuaded me to perform in one of her experimental plays, a role that forced me out of my academic shell, an experience that revealed acting on stage to be remarkably similar to instructing a class, requiring presence, projection, and the ability to command an audience. It instilled in me a newfound confidence in front of an audience, skills I have since incorporated into my teaching, making my history lectures more engaging, more dramatic. After graduating, we secured employment in the same vicinity, rented a cozy apartment with mismatched furniture, and dedicated ourselves to our burgeoning careers and evolving relationship. Chloe was not a dazzling celebrity, not yet, but she possessed an approachable girl-next-door charm that endeared her to everyone. She secured a few local commercial roles, small victories that fueled her ambition, and was even considered for a television news position, her natural poise shining through. However, after 6 months, she grew reserved and anxious, her vibrant energy replaced by a quiet preoccupation. I didn't suspect infidelity, not then, but something was unequivocally amiss, a subtle shift in her demeanor, a distant look in her eyes. We had discussed formalizing our relationship, dreaming of a future together, but decided we weren't ready, delaying the inevitable. I attempted to encourage her to confide in me, to unburden whatever weighed on her mind, but she remained guarded, her answers vague and evasive. One evening, I returned home after a taxing week of late-night grading and contentious faculty meetings to find an unsettling sight, a series of moving boxes and a large suitcase stacked neatly in the foyer, an ominous sign. In the living room, Chloe sat on the sofa, looking uncomfortable, her shoulders slumped. She offered a faint, strained smile and gestured for me to sit beside her. "Alexander," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I know you've noticed something has been bothering me lately." I nodded, my heart sinking, awaiting her revelation, bracing myself for the unknown. I've been offered a lead role in a pilot for a new sitcom in Starlight City. It's an incredible opportunity, a dream come true, and it's an opportunity one simply cannot forego, not if I ever want to truly pursue my passion. I was stunned, the words hanging in the air like an electric current. After a moment, a painful eternity, I finally managed to speak. "That's incredible. You should go now. Chase your dream, and I'll join you when the school year concludes. We'll have a whole summer to settle in together, to build our new life." But I discerned from her lowered gaze, the subtle tremor in her lips, that there was more, a painful coda to her announcement. She lowered her gaze, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "Alexander, I don't believe you should come. I love you, truly, but the entertainment industry is incredibly demanding, a relentless grind, and I don't wish to subject you to that constant emotional strain, the uncertainty, the rejections. I cannot expect you to live perpetually worried, to put your life on hold for my precarious career. My father and brother are coming to assist me with packing. This is the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, and I regret departing in this manner, without proper discussion, without giving you a choice. We had always deliberated major decisions collaboratively, our lives intertwined, but this time she had completely excluded me, making a monumental choice on her own, for herself. I realized she didn't want me to dissuade her or persuade her to allow me to join, that her mind was already made up. Yet, that knowledge did not mitigate the searing pain, the feeling of utter abandonment. "What on earth are you doing, Chloe?" I shouted, my voice cracking with a raw emotion I rarely displayed. "We have always made decisions together. You selfish sorceress. How far are you willing to go for your career? Perhaps that's why you've avoided marrying me all these years. What a relief to know now what I almost committed to." I was deeply wounded, the pain of rejection consuming me, and I yearned to inflict pain in return, to lash out at the one person who had shattered my world. She whispered, her voice barely audible, "I'm sorry, Alexander. You'll never truly know how much." She rose and headed towards the door where her father and brother awaited, their silhouettes visible through the frosted glass. They had been ready when I arrived, patiently waiting, but she had wanted to speak with me first, to deliver the crushing blow herself. I knew they had overheard my outburst, my desperate cries, and while they understood my anguish, they also knew I didn't truly mean it deep down, that it was born of profound hurt. In less than 20 minutes, with practiced efficiency, they had loaded her belongings into a waiting U-Haul. She glanced at me one last time, waiting to see if I had anything at all, left to say, any final plea. I merely stood there, paralyzed, a statue of grief. She offered a faint, sad smile and softly uttered, "I love you, Alexander," before quietly closing the door, sealing the end of our chapter. I was utterly devastated. It took me 2 years and a relocation to another educational consortium, a fresh start in a new city, before I could even contemplate dating again, before the raw wounds began to scab over. Rebuilding trust, however, required much longer, a slow, painstaking process of relearning how to open my heart. I never suspected Eleanor was having an affair during the conference. I trusted her implicitly, completely. I met her at the commencement of a new academic year, during an all-faculty meeting. One of those long, tedious motivational talks administrators are fond of delivering, full of buzzwords and empty platitudes. I arrived early, seeking refuge from the impending drone, and sat beside Brenda, a fourth-grade teacher I knew casually, passing the time with a mundane game on my tablet. As I occupied myself, Brenda introduced me to Eleanor, the new third-grade teacher, her bright smile and warm demeanor immediately disarming. We struck up an effortless conversation, an immediate connection that felt both comfortable and exciting, and I, uncharacteristically bold, invited her for coffee after the meetings. We ended up having dinner that very night, lingering for hours over shared stories and laughter, and agreed to meet again on Friday. Our relationship progressed swiftly, a whirlwind of shared passions and easy companionship, and we planned a June wedding, a celebration of what I believed was an unshakable bond. Trust. I believed our marriage was unshakable, built on a foundation of honesty and unwavering loyalty. We communicated about everything, from the mundane details of our day to our deepest fears and aspirations, enjoyed a fulfilling intimate life, shared aspirations for the future, and were eager to start a family, to fill our home with the joyful chaos of children. Naivety. No one relishes emotional pain, and we frequently block out elements that might harm us, erecting mental barriers against the unpleasant truth. I trusted Eleanor completely, never once suspecting she could betray me, never seeing the subtle cracks forming in our seemingly perfect facade. I was blind to her actions, permitting her to behave as she pleased because I refused to acknowledge the truth, preferring the comforting lie. Just as with Chloe, she made self-serving decisions without any consideration for me, for our shared life. I was a credulous fool, an unwitting participant in my own deception. She will probably assert that it meant nothing, that it was a momentary lapse, that she didn't wish to hurt me, and thus she concealed her impulses, her illicit desires. Though I started paying more attention to the road, the rhythmic hum of the tires a grounding presence, time still felt surreal, as if I were moving through a distorted reality. I realized I was approximately an hour from my residence, and it was nearing 8 a.m. I needed to attend to a few matters, practicalities that forced me back into the world. So I stopped at a hardware store for new locks, then Tech Haven for a discreet recorder and webcam, and finally, a liquor store. It was early, perhaps too early, but I knew I would require something to help me forget, to numb the searing pain once I ceased active movement and the adrenaline wore off. I estimated I had 12 to 24 hours before Eleanor made an appearance, a confrontation I dreaded yet craved. I had left her in a precarious situation, without her phone or laptop, and she would likely be dependent on my family for assistance, though I was unsure what I had conveyed to them, what half-truths I had mumbled to the hotel clerk. Upon arriving home, I kept myself occupied, channeling my raw emotions into productive, albeit spiteful tasks. I methodically replaced every lock on the house, each click of the deadbolt a symbolic severing of ties, installed a discreet recorder and webcam in the living room, ensuring no future conversations would escape my scrutiny, unpacked my suitcase, and with a perverse satisfaction, left her squarely outside the front door, a clear message. I retrieved refused bags and containers from the garage and began sorting her belongings, separating my life from hers with a cold precision. Arguments would undoubtedly ensue later, but the majority of the house and its contents were indisputably mine. I had purchased it before we met, paid off most of the mortgage, and it was solely registered in my name. I was determined to preserve that status, to protect what little remained of my domain. Nevertheless, I knew I would sell it once the divorce was finalized. What was once our home was now merely an empty shell, its value diminishing in my perception, tainted by betrayal. I set up monitoring devices and cameras to record any conversations, any attempts to trespass, and secured everything to prevent Eleanor's entry without my consent. It's astonishing how much one can condense into a trash bag when meticulous detail is disregarded, when sentimentality is discarded like so much refuse. I unceremoniously discarded her possessions, clothing, jewelry, toiletries, trinkets, into bags and boxes with scant regard for their value or meaning. It felt like a small, therapeutic act of retribution, a purging of the poison she had introduced into my life. I stacked the bags in the garage, a growing monument to our defunct marriage, filled Eleanor's car, which was also in my name, with as much as it could accommodate, and left the remainder by the garage door, along with her suitcase and travel bag, a stark display of her eviction. I had no desire for her to be inside the house upon her inevitable arrival. The sun had set, casting long, mournful shadows across the lawn, and I had no tasks left, no more distractions. A bottle of expensive scotch awaited me, and it was time to uncork it to drown the lingering pain. With each draft, the amber liquid burning a path down my throat, I foresaw the morning's consequences, the pounding headache, the crushing regret, and gradually pushed aside thoughts of my former life and marriage, seeking oblivion. The impending hangover would be a welcome diversion, a physical manifestation of my mental agony, diverting my mind from everything but its own insistent throbbing. A loud, insistent knock roused me from my alcohol-induced stupor, not the hangover I had anticipated, but a prelude to it. It took a moment to register that the sound was real, that someone was at the front door, invading my self-imposed isolation. Still clad in my soiled clothes from earlier, reeking faintly of stale alcohol, I grabbed a robe, pulled on some running shorts and a t-shirt beneath it, and made my way to the entrance, my mind still foggy. Another knock followed, sharper this time, accompanied by a voice stating, "Mr. Thompson, this is the police. Please open the door." My heart hammered in my chest. I opened it just as the officer was about to knock again, his hand raised. "Mr. Thompson," he inquired, his gaze sweeping over my disheveled appearance. And I nodded, clearly not at my best. "Mrs. Eleanor Thompson is here and states she's locked out of her house." The officer continued, his tone professional but with a hint of skepticism. "Officer, Mrs. Thompson no longer resides here." I replied flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. A quiet, heart-wrenching sob emanated from beside the door, where Eleanor stood, a pale, miserable figure. The officer frowned, his brow furrowing with confusion. "Aren't you still married, Mr. Thompson?" "For now," I conceded, my jaw tightening. "But by tomorrow morning, I'll rectify that, unless the law mandates I permit her entry. Her belongings are in her car or out front. I've canceled her phone, all joint credit cards, and her car insurance." The officer's frown deepened, a mixture of disapproval and surprise on his face. He exchanged a glance with Eleanor, who was now openly weeping. "Is all that truly necessary, Mr. Thompson?" "Yes, officer, absolutely," I affirmed, my voice unwavering, then, without another word, closed the door, cutting off her sobs. From the window, hidden behind the curtains, I observed as the officer, with a weary sigh, assisted Eleanor back to her car. She appeared dreadful, disheveled, her hair a tangled mess, and wearing ill-fitting clothes, likely borrowed or hastily purchased. I felt conflicted. A part of me knew she deserved this public humiliation, yet another part, a ghost of my former love, still recalled the vibrant woman I once cherished. Compassion, however, quickly dissipated, replaced by a cold resolve, and I turned away. I spent the remainder of the night systematically canceling our joint credit cards, her mobile phone, and the car insurance, cutting every financial umbilical cord that still connected us. I located 4 highly rated divorce attorneys online, researching their specializations and client reviews, and scheduled appointments for the following week. Tomorrow, I would commence moving forward with my life, one step at a time. Morning arrived, heralded by the first rays of sunlight filtering through the blinds, and I felt better than the previous day, though still utterly exhausted and overwhelmed, a lingering dull ache in my head. I had immediate objectives: a hot shower to wash away the previous night's griminess, a substantial breakfast to replenish my depleted energy, and clean clothes to present a semblance of normalcy. Then off to meet some new acquaintances, lawyers. I required an advocate, a champion, to help me safeguard my dignity and navigate the treacherous waters of divorce. By contacting 4, I hoped to restrict Eleanor's options, to tie up the legal landscape. Yes, I too can be self-serving, pragmatic in my pain. The primary conclusion from the meetings, each lawyer offering a slightly different strategy, but a similar outcome, was that I would likely retain the house, although it wasn't guaranteed since a portion of the mortgage was paid during our marriage, granting her some equity. Our pensions and salaries were comparable, and while my evidence, the video footage, might serve as leverage, using it as an explicit threat could be construed as extortion. Nevertheless, possessing those recordings should assist me in avoiding spousal support or pension division, and potentially even help me keep the house. It is maddening that infidelity carries no legal weight in our judicial system. In our state, like most others, divorces are based on irreconcilable differences. Her blatant betrayal was simply viewed as a poor decision, a moral failing, but not a legal one that impacted property division. The core issue for me was not Victor. It was her shattered promises, her deliberate desecration of our vows. That is precisely why I would not permit her back into the house, into my space. I urged my chosen lawyer, Miller, a shrewd and empathetic man with a quiet confidence, to file a breach of contract suit against both her and Victor, in case she attempted to secure a court order for access, to ensure she understood the severity of her actions. Miller cautioned that it was a long shot, a novel approach, but I insisted my resolve firm. It was a matter of principle and need for justice, and I wanted her to be starkly reminded of her betrayal, of the cost of her infidelity. I also wanted her to understand that this could jeopardize her family relationships and teaching career, particularly since she had acted in such a manner while officially representing the educational consortium at a professional conference. If the truth became public, rumors and speculation would inevitably spread, especially among those who were present at the conference, those who had witnessed our apparent happiness. We planned to serve her divorce papers on Thursday, once we ascertained her whereabouts, likely through Brenda. I had a few notions, a couple of likely places she might be, and conveyed them to Miller, who agreed to handle it with discretion and speed. The only person she could likely rely on now was Brenda. Brenda had been my closest friend, a confidant through many ups and downs, and the one who had introduced me to Eleanor. They had also become best friends, a trio of companionship. I suspected Eleanor had fabricated some narrative, a twisted version of events, to garner Brenda's sympathy and support, but the fact that I hadn't heard from Brenda indicated to me that she doubted Eleanor's version of events, that the truth was too stark to ignore. Still, Brenda was loyal and probably felt duty-bound to assist her, even if she didn't fully believe her. I wish I could claim I replayed the entire agonizing story several times that day, reliving every detail, but I didn't. I was physically, mentally, and emotionally depleted from the arduous drive and the weekend's events. The alcohol certainly didn't help, only dulling the edges of my pain, not eradicating it. My anger had subsided into a cold, hard knot of resentment, though there was no possibility of forgiveness or reconciliation, no path back to what we had lost. I am resolute, and I know myself, but I was not about to publicly humiliate her either, to broadcast her shame to the world. I was suspended somewhere between forgiveness and vengeance, a limbo of emotional exhaustion. By Monday night, I realized that remaining at home was counterproductive. Being surrounded by memories, by the ghosts of our shared past, only intensified my despair, trapping me in a cycle of grief. So, I resolved to embark on a road trip, a physical escape from the emotional confines of my house. There's a small town approximately 3 or 4 hours west with superb restaurants, a quiet charm, and scenic beauty. It was sufficiently distant to clear my head, to provide a much-needed mental break. I had taken Eleanor there before, but it was originally my place, a sanctuary I discovered years ago, and I wished to reconnect with it, to reclaim it as my own. On Wednesday morning, feeling a fragile sense of calm, I hit the road again, refreshed and prepared, the sun illuminating a new path. The drive was enjoyable, thanks to satellite radio and its endless stream of music, and I arrived before midday. My hotel room wasn't prepared yet, so I proceeded to a serene park on the northern side of town, featuring a tranquil fishing pond and ancient oak trees. I brought books and a comfortable folding chair, ready to escape into the pages. As an educator, I seldom have leisure time for reading, constantly surrounded by lesson plans and student papers. So this was a true indulgence, a luxury I savored. I became immersed in my book, its words a welcome distraction, savoring the detachment from reality, the temporary reprieve from my personal turmoil. It felt good to concentrate on something else, to distance myself from the predicament that had consumed my thoughts for days. By lunchtime, my stomach, a persistent reminder of earthly needs, reminded me it was time to eat. I returned to the hotel to retrieve my belongings before seeking a meal. The simple act of choosing food, a small victory. At the hotel, I checked my phone, which I had deliberately kept off to avoid distractions, to maintain my fragile peace. I wanted to see if my lawyer had any updates and to ensure my family was well, that the news hadn't spread too far. I hadn't heard from Eleanor since Saturday, which didn't surprise me, She probably needed time to collect herself, to process the fallout. However, I was irritated to discover a message and a voicemail from her, a jarring intrusion into my newfound tranquility. The message simply stated, "Please call." The voicemail was lengthier, her voice strained and tearful, but its essence was identical. "Alexander, please call me. We need to talk." Such messages are perpetually frustrating, always too late, always begging for a conversation that should have happened much earlier. Of course, we needed to talk, but it would have been preferable before she commenced her affair, before she shattered our vows. Damn it, I reminded myself, clenching my jaw. I am here to forget all this, to purge her from my mind. I swiftly texted back, "No, not now. Give me a few days." She responded almost immediately with, "Okay," which made me snort a bitter, humorless sound. Have you ever wished to reach through your phone and physically reprimand someone on the other end, to shake them until they understood the depth of your pain? I often felt that way, and I fantasized about outfitting my car with paintball markers to mark inconsiderate drivers, leaving colorful splatters of frustration on their tailgates. Yes, I understand the anger management implication, but you'd appreciate that too, wouldn't you? It would truly mitigate road rage, a harmless release of pent-up aggression. But I digress. I returned to my books, attempting to dismiss the chaos she brought into my life, to lose myself once more in the quiet world of fiction. The next morning, I awoke lying on my book, a crumpled pillow beneath my head, still in yesterday's attire, the faint smell of old pizza clinging to my shirt. Man, this has to cease, I muttered to myself, shaking my head. After showering and changing into fresh clothes, I was prepared to visit a coffee establishment renowned for crafting the world's finest cinnamon rolls, their sweet, warm aroma promised to accompany their rich coffee. Every city claims to possess one, but I choose to stand by my conviction here. This place was truly superior. I decided to return to my park, where I could once again escape from the world and its troubles, finding solace in nature. If Miller had executed his duties as expected, Eleanor would be served today, the legal process officially initiated. I envisioned this as a day to disconnect from the digital realm, to allow the news to settle without my immediate intervention. At some juncture, I would have to inform my family, to break the news of my shattered marriage. They wouldn't be like the families one hears about where a few, or many, would side with her, blinded by sentimentality. Blood is thicker than water, I reminded myself, not in a provincial sense, but because my family supports one another, a fierce, unwavering loyalty that I cherished. Their affection for me and respect for my decisions assured me I was not in jeopardy, that I would be met with understanding. They would be saddened, profoundly so, but they would stand by me, a solid rock in the shifting sands of my life. My hunger and need for nourishment brought me back to reality, pulling me from my contemplative state. I resolved to revisit the Mexican restaurant I had frequented the previous night. The Mexican cuisine, there was the best I had ever tasted, each bite a burst of flavor, warranting repeated visits during my brief escape. After eating more than I needed, feeling comfortably stuffed, I decided I had better check my phone, knowing the inevitable awaited. One message from Eleanor. "I'm so sorry, Alexander. Please forgive me." I sighed, a weary exhalation, and noticed a voice message from a number I recognized, likely one of Miller's, confirming the legal proceedings, and another for Brenda. "Alexander, call me please," it stated, brief and to the point, laden with unspoken worry. I concluded I was correct in assuming Eleanor was with Brenda, or at least communicating with her, seeking solace in their friendship. I called Brenda. "Alexander," she answered, her voice sounding genuinely surprised, a mixture of relief and concern. "Yes, Brenda, it's me," I replied, my voice calm, controlled. "Oh my goodness, what is happening?" Eleanor is in a complete state, utterly distraught, and you vanished off the face of the earth. No one could reach you. Life as I knew it ended early Saturday morning. Brenda, honestly, falling off the face of the earth would have been preferable to facing this reality, I said flatly, the bitterness evident in my tone. Eleanor has barely been conscious since Sunday. She's been a wreck, and when she received the envelope from her lawyer today, she was nearly catatonic, completely shut down. Brenda continued, her voice filled with empathy. What transpired at the conference, Alexander? Eleanor was dropped off late Saturday night, without even inquiring about her well-being, just left on my doorstep. All I could get from Eleanor was a mumbled, incoherent explanation about how she had ruined everything, how she had destroyed our life. That's about right, Brenda. I couldn't have articulated it better myself, I said, my tone hardening, the anger flickering back to life. I know you, Alexander, and I trust you made your decision based on facts, based on something truly significant, but sometimes you can become quite verbose, quite vengeful. Was it truly worth leaving her stranded on the other side of the state with nothing, without even her personal belongings? She asked, concerned, a hint of accusation in her voice. Here, this will help, I said, cutting her off, my patience wearing thin, and ending the call. I located the video on my phone, the undeniable proof, and transmitted it to her, a single decisive action. It might shock her or upset her, but it would unequivocally answer her question, providing irrefutable evidence of Eleanor's betrayal. Brenda could handle it. She knew me, so she should have anticipated something of this nature, or at the very least, it would reveal my emotional state and the gravity of the situation. I switched my phone off again for a short while, seeking another moment of peace. We would converse later, once the shock had worn off. Eleanor now possessed the paperwork. The legal apparatus was in motion, so the matter was in her hands. That offered me a modicum of peace for the moment, a small, fleeting sense of control. A burden lifted, and I felt weary once more, the emotional toll catching up to me. The comfortable hotel bed beckoned, and I succumbed, drifting into a restless sleep. The story unfolded in a city larger than I might have previously mentioned. It was sizable enough to host a modest college serving this part of the state, a liberal arts institution with a quaint historic campus. And like most university towns, it boasted a local pizza establishment, a beloved institution catering to hungry students with its greasy, delicious pies. In my personal culinary lexicon, pizza constituted one of the primary food groups. It served equally well for a satisfying dinner and a quick cold breakfast. So, I made my way towards the campus, drawn by the irresistible aroma of baking dough and melting cheese, to place my order. While waiting in line, observing the bustling student life around me, I noticed a woman approximately my age who seemed strangely familiar, a flicker of recognition nagging at the edge of my memory. Initially, I thought she might have been one of my former students from my early teaching days, perhaps grown up and changed, but something felt amiss, a deeper familiarity. When it was my turn to order, I realized she was observing me with the same perplexed expression I was directing at her, our gazes meeting across the crowded room. I ordered the Summit Feast, a colossal meat combination featuring every conceivable type of meat: pepperoni, sausage, ham, bacon, ground beef, and perhaps a few you hadn't even imagined, a true carnivorous delight. As I turned to depart with my order, a name, a long-forgotten memory, struck me with the force of a revelation. Lydia, I whispered under my breath. This woman, her smile still as captivating, her eyes still sparkling with intelligence, was Lydia Green, my high school sweetheart. Small world, isn't it? I mused, a wry smile touching my lips. I walked back to the counter to pay and met her gaze. She had realized it too, the recognition dawning in her eyes. We quickly transitioned from amused, tentative smiles to unrestrained laughter at the sheer absurdity of meeting here, years later, in a small-town pizza shop. Lydia, I exclaimed, barely containing my mirth. a genuine laugh bubbling up from deep within me for the first time in days. "My God, Alexander, is it truly you?" she said, rising from her seat and extending her arms for an embrace, her eyes twinkling. "In the flesh," I confirmed, hugging her tightly, the warmth of her presence a comforting balm. We broke the embrace, still laughing, the years melting away. "What on earth are you doing here?" I inquired as we settled down at a small, wobbly table. "I work at the college as a professor in the business department. My ex-husband secured an administrative position here a couple of years ago, and it just so happened that an opening perfectly suited to my skills arose right around the time our marriage imploded," she explained, a touch of weariness entering her voice. She observed me glancing discreetly at her left hand, noticing the absence of a ring, and added, her voice hardening slightly, "Well, now he's my ex-husband. Apparently, he had a penchant for female students, a disturbing pattern, and I don't appreciate sharing. And by sharing, I mean the lovely little STI he transmitted to me," she stated with clear annoyance, her lips thinning into a tight line. "I'm so sorry, Lydia," I said, wincing, the thought of Eleanor's infidelity and my subsequent question to her echoing in my mind. "That's a terrible way to discover something like that. Truly awful." She shrugged, a weary gesture. "Alexander, it's all right, sweetheart. It was a blessing in disguise, ultimately. We have a great deal to catch up on, some good, some bad. But let's just say I empathize with your sentiments regarding fidelity. I understand the depth of that betrayal." There was a brief, understanding silence between us, heavy with unspoken pasts, and I decided not to dwell on the harsh realities. Not now. I had come here for distraction, for a brief escape, and I couldn't have wished for a more perfect one, a serendipitous encounter with a ghost from my past who still held a piece of my heart. We remained at her table until my pizza was ready, the aroma filling the air, then relocated outdoors. A few picnic tables surrounded the pizzeria, some in better condition than others, splattered with old sauce and chewing gum. We found one that was sturdy yet secluded enough for an intimate conversation, tucked away beneath a sprawling oak. She recounted her journey, how she attended college, excelled in her business studies, found the corporate world too stressful, its relentless demands clashing with her desire for meaning, pursued her MBA, and ultimately realized she was happier guiding future business leaders as a professor than being one herself in the cutthroat world of finance. They had moved to this town for her ex, but she had stayed for herself, for the sense of purpose she found there. She enjoyed the students they attracted, their youthful energy, and felt she was making a genuine difference in their lives. The salary was adequate, providing a comfortable living, and single life afforded her all she desired and required, freedom and peace. "Dating?" I inquired, curious about her romantic life. "Yes," she replied, "but nothing serious. Casual connections, but nothing that has truly captured my heart." Then it was my turn, and I shared my story, a condensed version of the past week's devastation. She seemed captivated by the segments involving Chloe, her expression softening with understanding. I could discern that she saw aspects of herself in some of Chloe's choices, the ambitious drive, and could relate to my feelings of abandonment, the pain of being left. She nodded sympathetically when I described Chloe's decision to leave, a silent acknowledgement of a shared experience. I observed her light up as I spoke of my passion for teaching and my students, my voice regaining some of its usual enthusiasm, and the gravity returned when I mentioned Eleanor, the lightness draining from my face. She remained emotionally present as I recounted my discovery from nearly a week ago, her eyes wide with empathy, listening without interruption. "Oh, Alexander, I am so sorry," she said, her voice cracking with genuine sadness as she leaned in and embraced me tightly, her arms a comforting balm. I felt my self-control, which I had so fiercely guarded, slipping away, the dam breaking, and she held me as I fully expressed my anguish, the tears finally flowing freely, a torrent of grief and betrayal. We remained there for a considerable period, her hand gently stroking my back, and after I composed myself, wiping away the tears, she reassured me that everything, eventually, would be all right, that I would heal. "You will hurt for a while," she said, her voice soft but firm, "but I promise you will live and love again." Later that night, I awoke in a daze. The room felt unfamiliar, the dim light from the window casting strange shadows. It took a moment, my mind still sluggish with sleep and residual emotion, but I realized I was still in my hotel room. I was fully dressed, having collapsed onto the bed after our conversation, and to my surprise, I was not alone. I turned to see Lydia holding me tightly, still in her clothes from the previous night, her face serene as she slept, a gentle snore escaping her lips. I smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached my eyes. "Nothing wrong here," I mused, a wave of comfort washing over me. She had remained to comfort me after my emotional breakdown, a silent, steady presence. But what truly awakened me was my body's mourning necessity, a biological imperative that couldn't be ignored. I attempted to move quietly, to slip away without disturbing her, but Lydia stirred and awoke, her eyes fluttering open. "Alexander, are you okay?" she asked sleepily, her smile still bearing that youthful joy I remembered from so long ago. "Yes, Lydia, everything's fine. Sorry I woke you," I replied, a lightness in my voice I hadn't felt in days. After freshening up, we descended to the lobby for breakfast. Lydia wasn't particularly hungry, still half asleep, and without a change of clothes, she stayed with me anyway, content just to be by my side. While waiting in line for coffee, the aroma filling the air, I checked my phone. There were a couple of voicemail messages, one from Brenda, her voice filled with concern, and one from Miller confirming the paperwork had been delivered to Eleanor. There was also a missed call from my parents. Word must have reached them by now. I also had a missed call from an unknown number, which I ignored. With 2 steaming coffees in hand, I brought one back for Lydia. She took a sip and grimaced. "Ugh," she exclaimed, making a face. "This is hotel coffee, all right." We discussed the previous night, the emotional release, and she reassured me once more, her hand gently touching my arm. "Alexander, you need to go home," she stated firmly, her expression serious. "I don't have a home," I replied, feeling lost, the words catching in my throat. "You know what I mean?" she insisted, her voice soft but unwavering. "You're experiencing a great deal right now, a whirlwind of grief and anger, but the grief must pass for your sake and Eleanor's. You need to begin ending this relationship, whatever it is, so you can move forward, truly heal." "I know you're probably right," I admitted, the truth of her words stinging, "but it's not easy." "Lydia, I know that too." "Alexander," she said softly, her gaze compassionate. "But you're right. Self-pity will only lead to a deeper depression, and it will be harder to extricate yourself from it. You have to take that first step." Her gaze softened, and I could perceive the profound, loving connection in her eyes. Not physical desire, but the emotional kind I had been sorely missing, a deep sense of understanding. "I'll be here, Alexander. When you're ready, I'll be here for you," she said, flashing her mischievous smile before glancing around the bustling lobby and giggling. "Well, not right here, but you know what I mean." Lydia was right, of course. With a renewed sense of purpose, I packed my bags, prepared to confront the future, however uncertain it seemed. The drive back didn't feel as prolonged or draining as it had a week ago, a mere blur of highway and passing scenery. Though in some respects, it felt as though half a lifetime had elapsed, a seismic shift in my personal history. The journey took longer than usual as I drove slower, but I was in no hurry. I needed to formulate a plan, to map out the next steps in my new reality. I spent the drive contemplating whom I should speak with and what concrete steps I needed to take. When my phone signal returned, a welcome connection to the outside world, I called Brenda. "Alexander, thank goodness. Where are you?" How are you doing? Why did you vanish off the radar? Everyone was worried, she asked, her voice a torrent of concern. I'm coming home, I said, cutting through her questions, my voice calm and steady. I'm feeling better. Getting out of town this week helped me get my emotions in check to gain perspective. I wasn't taking sides, not really, she quickly added, a defensive note in her voice. Yes, Brenda, don't worry, I know. Eleanor is essentially on her own here, and I'm glad she has someone like you to lean on, someone who cares. Well, you've had enough of her. That much is clear, she continued, even as I attempted to interrupt, try to interject with my newfound clarity. I know she's been through a lot, but I never thought she'd do something like this, never in a million years. That makes two of us, I replied flatly, the fatigue returning. Some of the energy I had borrowed from Lydia began to wane as I spoke with Brenda. A good friend told me I should stop wallowing and figure out a way to move forward, I said, a hint of steel in my voice. That should start with talking to Eleanor. I've been thinking about what might help me get through this, what I need to say to find closure. Please don't misunderstand, but how is she doing, really? I asked cautiously, a morbid curiosity overriding my detachment. She was an emotional wreck for a while, Brenda responded, her voice softening. What she endured to get back here, the journey, the humiliation, being without her things, took a significant toll on her. Being alone without you, facing the reality of her choices, and finally realizing she messed up. It's been a lot, Alexander. She finally told me everything that led to your leaving, the whole sordid truth. Everything. I asked, a bit surprised, a flicker of interest. Well, she doesn't know how much you know, but she realizes it's enough to fracture your relationship beyond repair. On the surface, I think she hopes things can be mended, that there's a path to reconciliation, but deep down, she probably knows they cannot be, Brenda admitted, her tone somber. Being coddled has truly broken her down. She's been so lost, and she's only now starting to communicate and eat again. I can't even imagine how you feel, Alexander, the depth of your pain. I won't lie, Brenda, I feel as useless as a fart in the wind, I said with a wry smile, the absurd image a brief moment of levity. Always wanted to use that phrase, but never had the chance. It's all I could do to stay on track, to keep moving forward. I'm not sorry she feels awful. This mess is entirely her fault, a product of her choices. I know, dear, and so does she, Brenda said gently, her voice full of understanding. When she was lucid enough to talk, she explained everything. She explained why she did it, though even she doesn't fully understand the true motivation. So what's the word around town about me and Eleanor? I asked, curious, needing to gauge the public perception. Honestly, Alexander, since it's summer and I'm watching Eleanor like a hawk, keeping her from doing anything reckless, I don't really know what people are saying, what rumors are flying. There's plenty of gossip, I'm sure, and some folks are probably taking advantage of the situation, reveling in the drama. You know how people are. They love to speculate on others' pain, on their downfall. So no one's talked to her about it directly? Not that I know of, but if she hasn't been on the phone, if she's been isolated, it's doubtful, Brenda said. I sighed. I wasn't sure what I'd do with whatever people knew, but it would be helpful to have an idea of how folks might react when they saw me, when I returned to my routine. At the very least, I expected some sympathetic looks when I wasn't ready for them, an unwanted spotlight on my pain. I've seen this before, I muttered to myself, the echo of past betrayals haunting me. Twice on my way back, I stopped for fuel and a drink, forcing myself to break the monotony of the drive. Each time, I texted Eleanor, time to talk. After sending the messages, each one a small act of defiance against my own pain, I re-entered the highway, allowing my thoughts to wander, to roam freely. Two matters gnawed at me with persistent intensity. How effortlessly Eleanor had descended into an affair, abandoning everything we had built, and how utterly I had failed to notice, my trust blinding me. Both stem from the undeniable fact that I trusted her completely, implicitly. This was not the first time this had occurred. It was the third instance in a serious relationship where my trust had been so grievously betrayed. I knew I had to halt this pattern of thinking soon, or I would regret it, allowing myself to become a bitter, cynical man. There wouldn't be a fourth time. My thoughts shifted to Lydia. She had been there precisely when I needed her, a beacon of light in my darkest hour. And a part of me had always clung to her, a lingering affection from our youth. Could we attempt again, after all these years? Would it be a sensible idea, given our complicated pasts? Should I wait, and what if I waited too long, allowing the opportunity to slip through my fingers? She was still beautiful, her spirit vibrant, and I didn't know how long she would remain receptive to something with me. She had stated no one else had caught her eye, but how long would that hold true in the face of time and new experiences? My phone beeped, a message from Eleanor. Really? Yes. Name a time and place. I replied, my fingers flying across the screen. Okay, where should we meet? Somewhere safe but private. I considered whether having a witness present might be astute, in case matters deteriorated, but didn't feel appropriate given the intimate nature of the conversation, the deeply personal pain involved. We won't be together, that's for sure, I thought, a cold certainty. Even if my anger dissipates, the pain will not, and forgiveness, true forgiveness, is an impossibility, a bridge too far. Meeting at the house was out. It wasn't neutral territory for either of us, too fraught with shared memories and fresh betrayal. A restaurant was also a poor choice. I wasn't confident I could maintain my composure sufficiently to avoid creating a scene, a public spectacle of our private grief. Brenda's apartment seemed like the optimal option, a familiar, comforting space, but with enough distance to allow for a difficult conversation. I called Brenda and informed her of my plan. We'll talk in your living room, I said, and I need you to be there just in case things go off the rails, just as a silent presence. Of course, Alexander, it's no trouble at all, she said kindly, her voice warm and understanding. I'm friends with both of you, and if it helps either of you, or both, I'll gladly do it. I thanked her and kept the call brief, unwilling to prolong the anticipation. After pulling over, I sent Eleanor another text. I'll be there tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Then I switched off my phone, severing the connection, leaving the decision final. The remainder of the drive home was permeated with a sense of dread, a knot in my stomach. My head and heart spun with uncertainty, bracing for the inevitable confrontation. The next morning, I awoke and stared at the ceiling, the textured plaster a blank canvas for my churning thoughts. Acceptance, isn't that the final stage in the process? I questioned myself, the words echoing in the silence of the bedroom. Though forgiveness and forgetting remained distant, unattainable concepts, I was beginning to accept the situation, to truly grasp its reality. I was disappointed in Eleanor's choice and in my own blind trust, but I had ceased blaming myself for it, recognizing that I couldn't control her actions, only my reaction to them. It was simply a turn in life's road, a new path forced upon me, and I was ready to proceed. After scrambling some eggs and bacon, because bacon always enhances everything, even a somber morning, I called my parents to inform them I was all right, that I was stable. They had heard whispers that we had returned from the conference separately, but possessed little further information, respecting my privacy. I provided them with a redacted version of events, glossing over the intimate details, and told them things were severe enough for me to file for divorce. They were sorry, profoundly so, but as anticipated, they reassured me they would support me in whatever capacity I required, their love an unwavering constant. Next, I activated my laptop to check my emails. It had been over a week since I last logged on, a lifetime in the digital world. Wow, that's a lot of spam, I muttered as I sifted through the junk, deleting irrelevant advertisements. Nothing significant stood out, save for a few follow-up emails from vendors I had met at the conference, their cheerful tones a stark contrast to my grim reality. Time flew, an illusion of normalcy. And before I knew it, it was past noon, and I had to prepare to meet Brenda and Eleanor. I put on jeans, a crisp polo shirt, and loafers, something comfortable but not overly casual. I wasn't attempting to parade before Eleanor what she had lost, or to impress her with my recovery. I wanted this meeting to be more businesslike than a relaxed chat, a clear separation of past and present. This time was different from past relationship breakups because we had the opportunity to converse face to face, to articulate our pain and our decisions. The decision was made, the path forward set, but I hoped we could at least navigate the emotional turmoil together, find some semblance of peace. I laughed at myself, a bitter, hollow sound. Did I really think that? I scoffed. What a jest. Perhaps I should have become a therapist or a comedian to manage this absurdity. It was time to face my future like a condemned man, walking towards his fate. I seized my keys, shuffled to my car, and drove to Brenda's condominium, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm. Brenda resided across town in a cozy, tastefully decorated condominium. She had married directly out of high school, probably as an act of rebellion against her perpetually quarreling parents, seeking an escape from their constant bickering. Her parents were correct. However, neither she nor her husband was mature enough for a long-term relationship, and they divorced before she even graduated from college, their youthful passion burning out quickly. After that, she dated sporadically but exhibited no interest in anything serious, content with her independence. I was certain she had a friend with benefits or two, enjoying casual companionship, but that was not our dynamic. We were best friends, and gender played no part in it, our bond purely platonic. I pulled into the parking lot and sat in my car for a few minutes, taking deep breaths, attempting to stabilize my emotions, to find my center. I wasn't anticipating anger or tears, not for myself, but I was entirely uncertain what would unfold next, what emotional minefield awaited me. I wanted to enter feeling calm and in control, my resolve unwavering. As soon as I knocked, Brenda opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed but welcoming, and enveloped me in a profound embrace. She clung tightly, likely attempting to alleviate all the pain and anxiety within me, to absorb some of my suffering. I returned her hug, patting her shoulder to convey my appreciation, a silent thank you for her steadfast friendship. She stepped back, tears glistening in her eyes, and whispered, her voice choked with emotion. She's in the living room. Be true to yourself, but please, Alexander, be as gentle as you can. She's truly sorry. She's a broken woman. I nodded, offering a faint, strained smile as she retreated to her bedroom, leaving me to confront Eleanor alone, to face the wreckage of our life. I entered the living room and observed Eleanor seated there, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her posture rigid. She was well-dressed, probably aiming to create a favorable impression, to convey her remorse, but I could discern that the past week had been as arduous for her as it had been for me, etched onto her drawn face. Her eyes were red and swollen, her skin pale. I nodded as I took a seat opposite her, the distance between us a palpable chasm. The atmosphere between us was thick with tension, a suffocating silence, a blend of hope and fear in her gaze, a desperate plea. "Hello, Eleanor," I said quietly, my voice flat, devoid of warmth. "How are you?" There was an awkward silence before she responded, her voice barely above a whisper, raw with emotion. "I'm better, I suppose." As good as can be expected. We sat in silence for a few more moments, both struggling to decipher the other, to find the words to bridge the impossible gap between us. Finally, I broke the quiet, my patience wearing thin. "You requested time to talk, Eleanor, so I'll let you begin. What do you need to say?" She hesitated, her gaze flickering, unsure of where to commence, of how to untangle the Gordian knot of her betrayal. "Now that you're here, Alexander, I don't know where to start. The words feel inadequate," she admitted, her voice trembling. I nodded, a detached observer. We've always been honest with each other, I said quickly, a bitter irony in my voice, correcting myself with a sharp intake of breath. Well, we've always been honest before, I emphasized, the word hanging heavily in the air, a reminder of what was lost. So just start with what's on your mind, Eleanor, and we'll proceed from there. No more secrets. She took a deep, shuddering breath, her voice trembling, close to breaking. First, I know this won't sound as sincere as I intended, given everything, but I'm truly sorry. I'm sorry I made the decision to do this, to betray our vows. I'm sorry I didn't talk to you, didn't confide in you. I'm sorry you had to witness my mistake. I snorted, a harsh, humorless sound. Mistake? A misstep, perhaps. A simple oversight. I muttered under my breath, my sarcasm cutting. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes, spilling freely down her cheeks. No, Alexander, there's no word that can excuse what I did. It wasn't a mistake. I committed infidelity. I cheated. I did it heartlessly and practically flaunted it in front of the people we work with, people who know us. I selfishly decided to try something new, to explore a dangerous path, and shut you out completely. Whether I realized it or not, I did all of this and rubbed it right in your face, oblivious to the consequences, to your pain. She paused, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, her shoulders shaking. I acted promiscuously, and I've paid the steepest price for it. Losing you, losing everything. I sat back, observing her speak, my expression unreadable. There was no doubt she was genuinely remorseful, not solely because she had been caught, not just for the repercussions, but because she recognized she had annihilated everything, every shared dream, every loving memory. I could see the guilt consuming her, twisting her features, and a small, almost imperceptible part of me almost wished to comfort her, to reach out. So you're telling me this just happened with him, Victor, without any real reason, no underlying issues, no problems in our marriage? I asked, striving to maintain focus, to get to the root of it. In a way, yes, she replied, her voice trembling, her gaze fixed on the floor. So much has been transpiring lately, so much stress and pressure, that I can't even recall what initiated it or why. It was a monumental lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness I deeply regret. We attended a few sessions together at the conference, shared some professional insights, and on the first day, we began conversing, drawn together by common interests. He appreciated my humor, laughed at my jokes, and I liked his laughter and insights about teaching, his charming wit. After lunch, we embraced a casual, friendly hug before heading to our next sessions, and it felt special. Not like what you and I had, not the deep, profound connection, but it felt exhilarating, dangerous, a thrill I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't seeking anything else, Alexander. Please believe me. I wasn't looking to replace you. She paused, and I could see her eyes filling with tears again, her voice barely a whisper. We kissed, she admitted, her voice breaking, and that kiss lingered with me for the rest of the day, a constant hum of excitement. I stared at her, my stomach churning with a fresh wave of nausea. Charming, I muttered sarcastically, the word dripping with scorn. So, you didn't think you needed to inform me you'd found someone new, someone who provided this electric, dangerous thrill? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Alexander, he wasn't a replacement. I never felt like I was replacing you. It was just electric, dangerous, like when we used to push boundaries in public, those little thrills we'd seek together. But this time I was foolish. I crossed a line I never should have, and now I have to live with the consequences, to bear the weight of my actions. Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret, thick with the stench of her betrayal. I looked at her, torn between a burning anger and a profound sorrow for what she had become, for what we had lost. Have you consulted a doctor? I asked abruptly, cutting through her tearful apologies, a harsh, practical question. She blinked, confused by the sudden, cold shift in my line of questioning. No, not yet, but Brenda gave me some therapist recommendations. She thinks I need help. No, Eleanor, I'm not talking about a therapist. I interrupted coldly, my voice like ice. I'm talking about a doctor. You might have contracted something that could jeopardize your health, your future. Her eyes widened as she grasped my meaning, the realization dawning on her face. I, I didn't even consider that, she stammered, her voice a horrified whisper. He told me he was clean. I laughed bitterly, a harsh, mirthless sound that echoed in the quiet room. Of course he did. And you believed a man who was willing to sleep with another man's wife? Truly trustworthy Eleanor. She lowered her head, weeping softly, her body trembling with shame and fear. Alexander, what have I done? She whispered between sobs, the full weight of her actions crashing down on her. You jeopardized your life, your health, and your marriage for a fantasy, Eleanor. I replied, my voice hardening, devoid of pity. Let's hope all you lose is your marriage. Eleanor's tearful eyes met mine, silently pleading for me to reconsider, to offer a glimmer of hope. But beyond that desperate plea, I discerned the understanding that this was the end, the final curtain. Therapy would be beneficial for her. She desperately needed to comprehend why she made those choices, why she self-sabotaged, before she could embark on a new beginning, a new life. I didn't wish to utterly shatter her, to break her completely, but she had to grasp the gravity of her actions, the irreparable damage she had inflicted. I watched her weep for a while longer, the sound filling the room. There was no satisfaction in it, no feeling of triumph, only a deep weariness. I could see she was hurting almost as profoundly as I was, the guilt of visible burden, and that it would take her a considerable time to recover, to rebuild her life. But love doesn't simply vanish. It transforms, morphs into something new. In this instance, it had transmuted into pain, anger, and profound disappointment, a bitter legacy. I stood up, the silence between us stretched taut, ready to depart, to finally close this painful chapter. Eleanor rushed over and embraced me tightly, clinging to the last shred of hope she possessed, her arms desperate. I'll regret this forever, Alexander, she whispered, her voice shaking, muffled against my chest. But if you grant me another chance, if you let me come home, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, proving my devotion. I sighed, a long, weary exhalation. I'll regret it too, Eleanor, more than you know, but I don't believe I can ever trust you again, not truly, and neither of us deserves to live like that, bound by suspicion and resentment. She shuddered, holding me a little longer, her grip tightening for a moment before releasing her embrace, her shoulders slumping in defeat. As I turned to leave, her voice, filled with sorrow and despair, called out, I still love you, Alexander Thompson. I know, Eleanor. I replied softly, without turning back, the words a gentle echo in the stillness. I know. Brenda must have been listening for the opportune moment, for the sound of my movement, because she emerged just as I passed by the living room doorway. She gave me another hug, a warm, comforting embrace, and walked me to the door, her concern palpable. You know, I'm no expert, and I know this is incredibly painful, but are you certain you can't forgive her, Alexander? She asked, her voice gentle, pleading. No, Brenda, I said with a sad smile, a glimmer of the pain still in my eyes. Someday I'll forgive her. I truly hope so, but the problem is I'll never forget, and by the time I've forgiven her, the damage will already be done, the trust irretrievably broken. We wouldn't endure that. Our marriage would be a hollow shell. She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding, kissed my cheek, and watched me walk away, closing the door softly behind me. The divorce proceeded smoothly, devoid of unnecessary drama, surprisingly amicable. We possessed limited assets, and Eleanor's deep remorse, Her profound guilt ensured the house wasn't an issue, her silence a testament to her regret. Her attorney was not pleased with her decision to agree to whatever terms I proposed, frustrated by her client's compliance, but I was equitable regarding our financial and physical assets, ensuring a fair division. We hadn't been married long enough to accumulate substantial wealth or investments, so it was straightforward, a clean break. Her lawyer even suggested couples counseling at one point, a last-ditch effort, but Eleanor declined, stating it would be a waste of time and money, knowing the damage was too deep. I later heard that she had commenced individual therapy, a positive step towards healing. Brenda and I maintained contact, our friendship enduring the storm, and she was always there for me when I needed to talk or vent, a listening ear and a steady presence. We remained close friends, and I was grateful for that, but we both knew she was no longer my best friend. That cherished position had been reclaimed by my first best friend, Lydia, a bond rekindled after years apart. Lydia and I began spending more time together, cautiously, tentatively, predominantly. I visited her in her college town, but since we were both educators, we enjoyed free summers, a luxury that allowed us ample time. We could travel to see each other or spend long afternoons together without the demands of work, our schedules aligning perfectly. It didn't happen immediately. We were both wary of rushing, but after a few weeks, we started growing closer again, rediscovering the comfortable companionship, rekindling the bond we had all those years ago, a familiar warmth. It was several weeks before Lydia and I shared intimacy for the first time, a moment I wanted to be profound, meaningful, not born of rebound or desperation. I could sense she was ready, perhaps a tad impatient, but I wanted it to signify something deeper, a true recommitment. I booked a hotel room in her city, coincidentally, the very one where she had comforted me during my breakdown. A full circle moment. After a delightful dinner, she was tipsy and laughing as we returned to the hotel, her hand intertwined with mine. "So, you're going to make me a liar?" she teased, giggling, recalling her earlier prophecy of my return home. "Technically, yes," I replied, my voice soft, but this is where I knew I wanted a future with you, where I felt that connection again. Her laughter ceased, replaced by a broad, radiant smile. She leaped into my arms, and this time we didn't awaken still dressed, but wrapped in each other's embrace, a silent promise. Lydia and I have now been married for almost 2 years, a testament to patience and enduring love. Though it didn't occur instantly, we were both cautious about committing to another long-term relationship, taking our time to build a new foundation. I remained at my school for another year, the distance imposing a strain on us, but our love persevered. Fortunately, a job opened in the city where she resided, a perfect fit for my experience, and I was hired in the social studies department. I often wondered if her colleagues at the college had influenced that decision, pulling strings for their esteemed professor. But it didn't matter. I was where I was meant to be. After a year together, we felt confident, our bond unbreakable, and I proposed. We set a date for a small, intimate wedding, a celebration of our second chance. Before the wedding, Lydia did something unexpected, something that surprised and touched me deeply. She contacted Chloe. It required some effort, tracing her through old contacts, but eventually, she reached Chloe through her manager, a mutual connection from their past. When Lydia informed me of her outreach, I was surprised but curious, a sense of anticipation building. I picked Chloe up from the airport, a nervous excitement fluttering in my stomach, and she looked just as stunning as when she had left me years ago, her beauty undimmed by time and Hollywood. She had a small entourage with her, a publicist and an assistant, a sign of her success, and after a warm, genuine hug, I took their bags to the car, feeling a sense of nostalgia. Chloe had cultivated a stable career in Starlight City, consistently in demand for television and films, her talent recognized. I invited her to speak at my school, to share her journey with my students, And once people learned about our past, about our connection, I became something of a local legend, the man who dated a celebrity. Even the male teachers and some students viewed me in a new light after that, a mix of awe and respect. After the school day concluded, Chloe and I sat in my classroom, the familiar surroundings comforting, reminiscing about our shared past, our voices low. She could tell I had lingering questions, unspoken doubts, and eventually addressed the obvious one. Alexander, she began, her gaze direct, I've made many decisions in my life, some easy, some hard, but leaving you was the toughest, and almost my only regret, truly. She smiled wryly as I listened, captivated by her honesty. Could we have succeeded outside of Starlight City? Yes, sometimes I ponder the what-ifs, especially when the fast-paced, superficial life here overwhelms me, when I crave genuine connection. But I've had experiences and opportunities one wouldn't have if I'd stayed, a level of success I wouldn't have achieved. It's not that you held me back. You're loving and supportive, truly. But I had to go for myself, for my own journey, my own ambitions. Chloe paused before continuing, her voice softer. I've tried to maintain my values intact, even if it cost me roles, even if it meant sacrificing some opportunities. But I wouldn't have lived up to what you deserve, Alexander, not then. I hope you understand, truly. I nodded, feeling a profound sense of closure, the old wounds finally healing. Understand, Chloe, I said quietly, a weight lifting from my shoulders. We discussed more about Starlight City life, where relationships were often driven by convenience, by superficial appearances and fleeting attractions. Chloe admitted she yearned for genuine love, a deep, lasting connection, not the superficial kind surrounding her. The empty promises. I hope you find that, Chloe, I said sincerely, wishing her true happiness. Thanks, Alexander. I hope so too, she replied, smiling, a mutual understanding passing between us. Lydia reaching out to Chloe had been a wise decision, an act of grace. She wanted to resolve any lingering feelings before fully committing to me, to ensure there were no shadows from the past. I'm glad she did. It wasn't about a lack of trust in Lydia, but it helped heal wounds from past relationships, including Eleanor, allowing me to move forward with a truly open heart. Lydia and I are expecting a baby boy, due in the spring, and I believe we will be happy, our family growing, our future bright. Chloe still visits us, enjoying the tranquility away from Starlight City, the quiet comfort of our home, and we have visited her in California, experiencing her world for a few days. She was right. The Starlight City lifestyle isn't for us, too chaotic, too demanding. It's enjoyable to visit, to dip our toes into that world, but we're happiest in the life we've built together, a life of stability, love, and shared purpose. Eleanor relocated back near her hometown, found a teaching job at a small community school, and occasionally sends us letters, brief updates, a respectful distance. She has a new boyfriend, and I hope she has learned from her past mistakes and can fully commit to him, finding the genuine connection she truly needs. Brenda is dating the new vice principal of my old school, a charming, ambitious man. She's not in a hurry to settle down, still valuing her independence, but she's content, her life full. Her students fulfill her maternal instincts, and I hope her new companion appreciates her as much as I do, as much as she deserves. This journey, from betrayal to new beginnings, has had its highs and lows, both anticipated and unforeseen, twists and turns I never expected. We don't always get to choose how things unfold, how life throws its curveballs, but my hope is that Lydia and I can embrace the plan when it works and savor the surprises, however unexpected, when it doesn't. We truly did end up together, just as I had envisioned, a second chance at a love that was always meant to be. I hope forever means just that.